So at Cuddle Party, we do this exercise where after we've gone through and said no to everything and yes to everything, and switch to see how does that feel in our body, we then go around and ask for hugs, get as many hugs as we want, and also practice saying no a few times. I know my experience is a lot of the people in the room I want to have hugs from. So if I'm asked, I want a hug, but I also want to practice the saying no. And it does feel funny to say it right after. It's different situation to say no to everything when your assignment is say no to everything, but having to choose to say no, still, when it's someone I want a hug from, it feels like, oh no, they're going to think I feel differently about them than the other people I am hugging in the room. So what I tend to do is, no, can I have a hug? And ask right after. And I find that helps lessen scarcity of there's only 10 people in this room and I want a hug from everybody. So I don't want to eliminate options for hugs. And I guess I wonder, what can be said about scarcity in the world of touch where maybe we end up with some that we don't, it's not our ideal. It's not what we'd really want, but it's kind of like all we can get.
Mm-hmm. Oh my goodness. Well, there's so much I could say about scarcity and about everything you just said. So, yeah, let me talk about scarcity because it's a big thing in our culture and our society. This idea that this zero-sum game, that there's not enough to go around, and if someone else has, if I have more, someone else has less. If if someone else has more, I have less. This is a source of so much pain and difficulty in our world. And of course, it shows up at a cuddle party. And one of the creators of Cuddle Party, I remember him saying to me one time, this idea of, right, if somebody is starving and they're underfed, right? They haven't had enough food to eat. And you take them to a party where there's, people walking around with hors d'oeuvres, and you walk up with this, tray of hors d'oeuvres and would you like one? And they're like, oh, they want to take the whole plate. And you're like, whoa, stop, these are, but it's understandable, right? When we're in this scarcity, if we're depleted, that we're just going to want to, it's this idea of going shopping hungry. If you go to the grocery store when you're hungry, you're not going to make the best choices around you're just going to be like, ah. So yes, scarcity is a thing. And what I love about your strategy there is you're also demonstrating one of the rules of Cuddle Party, which are these rules of the road. It's how we navigate Cuddle Party is, again, if you're a yes, say yes. If you're a no, say no. And then you're encouraged to change your mind, right? So practicing changing our mind is something, because that's something we also don't get a lot of support for. Usually when we change our mind, I know when I was a kid and I changed my mind, it was like, well, make up your mind, or are you unreliable, or you're just, flighty or something. But the truth is our mind changes. We might be a yes one moment, and then something changes and we're a no the next. So being able to communicate that is also really helpful. But the thing I heard that you said, Larysa, which is sometimes we'll say no just to say no, which is okay. Cuddle Party, we're practicing. But also you had this well, I'm worried about what they'll think. I don't want them to think I don't like them, and this is a thing where sometimes we think if we say yes, we're signing a contract, right? If I say yes, then I'm committed and I can't change my mind. But also sometimes we think if we say no, even if we are a no, that we're cutting off all our chances forever. And that makes it really hard to say no. If you think this is my one chance and I'll never have that, again, the scarcity thinking, saying no is instead of just tuning in and being no, I don't really want to hug right now. But maybe, 5 minutes later, I'm going to want to come back and ask for that. And you can. No doesn't mean you're closing off your options, right? It just means you're honoring your truth in the moment.
And it can be so easy to think, well, if I say no, they're going to be mad at me and they're going to hold that against me. So even if I change my mind out of spite, they're going to say, never mind, I don't want it anymore.
Yeah.
But we can't control that. That's the kind of thing that's not up to us.
Right. And there's, one, I think we've all had experiences where we said no and somebody was fine. Or, or even I got punished even as a 2-year-old, right? We said no, and we're like, that's not okay. And so that's deeply ingrained in our nervous system, right? And we have to remember that's the past. It's not about the person in front of us right now, and it's just again, like being able to practice that secure attachment or bonding and trust. And this goes back to another video where we talked about thank you for taking care of yourself, right? If we say no and somebody says thank you for taking care of yourself, it's like, oh, okay, maybe I won't get banished from the tribe. Maybe I won't be exiled. Yeah.
In the past, we've talked about domain, what's mine, what's theirs. And Cuddle Party is a great place to learn to take responsibility for our feelings and to know what is not our responsibility, and someone's reaction and whatnot. As long as we've been kind and considerate, we can't control how they're going to respond. So I wonder, besides like reviewing what we talked about in the past on domain, any ideas how to reinforce in the mind what we can't control and to not take responsibility for other people's feelings that at no point were our responsibility.
Yeah. It is. It's humbling to me, actually, how much, like, we all know that, but remembering it and it doesn't mean we're not going to have the emotional response. I guess some of the things that help me are one, remembering that I have a friend who says, what is it? When you point your finger at somebody, there's always 3 fingers pointing back at you.
Mhm.
So there's that thing, if somebody's like, offended, then it's really about them. It's not about us. My son used to say to me, Mom, offense is not given, it's taken. And I think that's another, right? Like we're just being honest with them. And if they feel offended, right, we don't have control over that. The other thing is like, well, that's good information. Is that really somebody I want to hang out with? Is that really somebody that I want to hug with? It's probably not somebody that's going to be a good fit for me. So thanks for letting me know. It's kind of like, that's good information. But yeah, ultimately that again takes a lot of practice and just reinforcement, reminding ourselves that it's really, there's nothing I can do about it. And it can be disappointing. It can be, it's not what we would hope for. And we don't like disappointing other people. We don't want them to feel that way, but we can't control other people's feelings. And we wouldn't want people to control ours. I think that's also, like, I have a right to my own disappointment. I have a right to my own upset. And how am I dealing with my own, and maybe that's where I try to go back to myself. Like, okay, they're upset and maybe I'd like to make them feel better, but maybe I could just be here for me. And that reminds me of the safe seat practice, which is something we had talked about, which is another really good practice around that.
Awesome. So for some people that have grown up in an environment where the Cloud and Townsend book, Safe People, would say they grew up around safe people, they might just need that reminder of what they're not responsible for. But when people have had a long history of being surrounded by people who kind of force them to take responsibility for their emotions when it really never was their responsibility, those deep grooves in the brain get formed. And Cuddle Party one time can help, but it's probably not going to undo years and years in one time. So besides going to every Cuddle Party you can find, what can be done to kind of reframe that so we can really believe and get it into us that it really is not our responsibility?
It is deep, deep work. And I'm really glad that you brought that up, right? This is a paradigm shift for a lot of us, right? When you grow up with something, you're like, that's just the way it is. And then having an experience outside of that can actually be disorienting for a lot of people. And at first it just seems really like, what's going on here? And it's a gradual process. I call it reparenting. I mean, it's really a process of becoming the parents for our inner child that we didn't have as children. And the older we get, the more we can become that loving, safe space. But it starts with consciously just realizing it. I mean, if you're listening to this video right now, like that's a beginning, even, or like, oh, I didn't know there was such a thing. And just honoring your own impulses, but knowing that if something, yeah, if you're anxious or it doesn't feel right, that there are some new possibilities behind that. And then the cuddle party practice, or if it's cuddle party or some other type of consensual event, being in relationship with other people who are also practicing with you, and surrounding yourself with people who are showing you a different model is essential. It's, you kind of need to do the work yourself alone, and you also need to do it in interaction with other people to reprogram those patterns.
So there is hope.
Yeah. Oh, totally. There are always possibilities.
Well,
Yeah.
it's
Thank
great
you,
to listen.
Larysa.
Well, thank you so much for sharing all your knowledge as usual. And I look forward to the next time we get to talk.
Me too.